welcome to NAPOD, where we provide NA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us to be self-supporting by visiting napod.xyz, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 in the virtual basket. If you're also in AA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, Sobercast. Sobercast features AA speakers and workshops in the same format as NAPOD. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for Sobercast, that's 2 words, on any podcast player app, or go to Sobercast.com. Enjoy the podcast, and thanks for listening.
Our last speaker, before I introduce him, I'll just say this. I think one of the joys of being in Narcotics Anonymous is you get to meet other people that become very close to you, and it's almost like you're growing up with them. And Gene is one of the people that I had the pleasure of growing up with, so I want to introduce Gene. Thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. I want to start out with a tear because I'm having a hard time controlling myself. I've got enough notes here to write a book. Start a library, I think. And I've been taking notes because there's so much information, and there's no way we can give it all to you, And so we have to. Mary Jane touched on a certain area, Celia touched on a certain area, and I feel it's sort of anticlimactic, if you know what that means. The climax has already taken place, and so I'm just cleaning up the trash, But there were some words one word that Sylvia spoke, and that was the word joy. And that's a powerful word because it's not superficial. It's not because you have a new car or a new dress or a motorcycle or a new shirt, Joy has nothing to do with that. Joe from South Bend, Indiana, called me a couple of days. He's been calling me for a long time, and he said, "Man, aren't you excited about going to Nashville?" And I said, "No, I'm not." I said, "I'm not excited at all because I knew I was coming here for a couple months in June, I guess, or a long time, and something happened to me when I was asked to come here. And it wasn't excitement. It was responsibility. Yes. If people think that we're important because of the years that we have in the program, it's not important. It's not important. A fellow from South Bend asked me, I think it was, what's your name? Neil. He said, "Boy, thank God you were here, then, and boy, it was great that you were here, and it was like he was pointing at me, and saying, man, you're really great, that's a great thing, man, that you were there at that time because now here we are." Well, it blew his mind because I said, you know what? If I wasn't there, who would have been there? Neil. Neil would have been there. And he would have been up here saying the same thing I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference? Mm-hmm. Because I was born in 34 and he was born in 54 or something, What's the difference? But there's a joy that we feel, It's a blessing for me to be here with these two ladies, I respect these ladies a lot. I didn't have much of a, a family life. My mother and father were both alcoholics. My mother hung herself in the county jail in Marysville, California. And my father ran head on into a semi-truck just a month after I had made amends to him in 1962. And I thank God for that. But these women have been very special to me, and I want to tell you a little something about them. Mary Jane looks like a nice, respectable old Jewish gal, you know. But I'll tell you, well, the first thing I like to do, I was her sponsor, you know, which when in '62 we didn't know it wasn't right for me to sponsor a woman. And so I'd like to create a little excitement because I'd like to tell you about her inventory. I've got it all written down here. Is that okay, Marcia?
Okay.
I would embarrass myself.
No, definitely back it to her.
But that was an interesting experience. Those are the kind of things that we did, you know. And Mary Jane and I never got any closer than an inventory and a motorcycle. In 1962, I had a 1946 Harley Knucklehead. A real fine bike. And Mary Jane and I rode all over the valley on that thing.
And his wife let him.
And my wife let him. I couldn't believe it. Anyway, but another thing, there was a lady by the name of Penny that also, she was a nurse, and one of Jimmy's special friends, she came in and she was there in I think 61. And I came in '62. She was an old lady, you know, like me now. And she wanted to ride on my back of my bike, you know. So I went up and I picked her up and I rode my bike from about 5 miles from my place to her place, and I had big megaphones on the side, you know. And said, "Okay, Penny," you know, I'm sort of dense, you know. Said, "Okay, Penny, come on, jump on, man." And she pulled up her dress and she laid on that thing and laid her leg right against those two megaphones and just fried her leg, you know. There was, man, I felt so bad, so stupid about that. But anyway, that was Penny, and Penny's gone. Penny's gone now. But I don't think she ever had a resentment toward me because of that, so she was a pretty spiritual lady. But Sylvia was a wonderful, wonderful lady, you know, and she had a really hard time. She didn't have many finances, and she was raising 2 kids, and she really stuck in there. And I had an old '50 Plymouth convertible. A red Plymouth convertible, and I sold it for $50. And I'm saying that because I want the $50.
I can give it to you now.
I know you should. Well, you're going to take me to dinner sometime. We'll call it easy, okay? Okay. But anyway, Sylvia drove that around for a long time. And I used to
say permanent convertible.
A permanent convertible. I used to drive. Well, I'm not going to tell you about that. I did a lot of bad things with that car. But you know, and I was talking to a guy by the name of Eric today, and just before the meeting, and he lives here in Nashville. He's going to school. He's studying chemistry and stuff, and we got to talking about the program, and he says, you know, one thing I never hear about in the program is trust, you know. And he says, I've been around for a few months, and he says, I just don't hear about it, you know. Trust and character building. And I think that's one thing that we had in the beginning. We trusted each other, you know. And we knew we could depend on each other. Like Mary Jane talked about going on to 12-step falls any time of the day or night, you know. It was no problem. We didn't think about it, you know, and hardly any of us had televisions then, and so we weren't hung up that way, or computers and stuff, and somebody said, hey, a gal over here needs some help, or a guy over there or something. We just did it, you know. And so I'd sort of like to talk about the first year on the program, because that was a joy-filled year. It wasn't exciting, you know, but there was a lot of deep felt camaraderie and connectedness, and we loved each other and we trusted each other, and we knew that if we had a need, all we had to do was to go to somebody, and they wouldn't say, well, go to somebody else. No, they said, we'll fill that need, and maybe if we have to, we'll get Joe, Bill, and Alice, you know, and we'll get together and we'll fill your need, whatever that is. And so there was a type of dedication, a trust, you know, that none of us had ever felt before, because when you're dealing with drugs and stuff, but you know, that's something that just doesn't happen, you know. But the guy that took me to my first meeting was a guy named Paul Rosenbluth. Sylvia knows him well. And talking about character building and this type of thing, Paul took me to my first meeting. He'd been clean for a while. Anyway, and then he sort of went off and did his own thing, and him and another guy got in the insurance business and stuff, and they liked to play the horses and things, and pretty soon Paul had been a newspaper boy, you know, carrying the newspapers around and stuff, and all of a sudden he got himself a brand new Lincoln Continental. His wife started coming to meetings in a fur coat, big diamond rings. Hey man, how you doing? Oh man, things are going great, you know, insurance government business, you know. And then all of a sudden we started reading in the paper, man, that there was a couple guys, Mutt and Jeff Bandits, you know, were robbing banks. And it took about a year before I got caught, you know. But that's the guy who took me to my first meeting, you know. And actually Sylvia worked for Paul and John, and so she had first, well, she knows the meaning of integrity, let's put it like that. And so we need to think about the people that we're associating with, you know. And my first sponsor, and only sponsor really, was a guy named Paul Stewart, Mary Jane's, one of her husbands. Two or three or
Number four.
Four? Number 4. And he was just a really neat guy, very charismatic. I was on my way to Synanon, and a guy told me, he says, well, stop in at the North Hollywood Club on the way to Synanon. It's about halfway between where I'm at and over there. And so I stopped in there, and it was an AA club, you know. We didn't have any clubs then in NA or anything. And so I stopped in there and talked to the guy, and then I said, well, I'm going to be on my way to Synanon, you know. I said, I don't need AA. And so he said, well, he says, there's a guy I'd like you to meet. His name's Paul, and he comes down here, he lives up the street, and he comes down about noontime, you know. So I said, okay. So anyway, he didn't tell me anything about this guy, Paul, but he came over, and so I met Paul, and Paul says, you know, I told him I was going to Synanon. He said, well, he says, we have a group called Narcotics Anonymous here, and he says, you're welcome to stay. And I said, no, I don't want to be around anybody that's using it. I want to get locked up in Synanon. I know nobody's using it, you know. And he lied to me again. He told me, he says, nobody be using it at the meeting. And I tell you, it was pretty much that way, though, because it was very strict, because there was a couple guys, Mullins and what's his name, Narcs, that were around Estelle. They were around town, but actually Jimmy had talked to these guys, you know, and Jimmy said that, you know, they were willing to leave us alone as long as we didn't go off in some weird direction. So anyway, but so Paul became my sponsor, and Well, at that time, he says, I have to get a hold of this guy, Jimmy, and he says, he'll be here about 5 o'clock. He's a painter and he works, but I want you to meet him because we have to talk to him, and I guess I had told Paul I'd just been out of an insane asylum, for not too long. I was 61, 62, I was in an insane asylum, and so he probably wasn't quite sure about me, and so anyway, about 5 o'clock, here comes this guy in his painting clothes and stuff, and skinny little guy, and it was Jimmy Kinnon. And so I thought, well, Paul's going to have this guy evaluate me and see if I come to the meetings, And so he come in, he talked to me, and he's sort of a stern, straight-laced guy, he talked to me, he asked me some questions and stuff, but very kind. And so anyway, I decided to go to meetings, and so the first meeting I went to was Roads and Moore Park. That was the Mother Group, and this guy Paul Rosenbluth took me there, and there was a guy named Jack Whaley there, who thank God that he was leading the meeting, and he was pretty nuts, and he had papers to prove it. One thing he mentioned, he says, and I've been in an insane asylum. I got a 1/4-inch hole drilled in the side of my head, to prove that I was there, and this and that. When he said that, I said, well, I guess I belong. So anyway, so that's how it sort of started, But there was a character building and a trust that we had, And we talk about 12-step work, and I sort of like what Terry was talking about. I didn't care much for his language, but I looked past that, and I looked at his heart, and like we should all do, and I seen what he was saying about, big shots in NA and getting on boards and this and that, speaking at meetings and all this kind of stuff. And he says, he says, if they ask you to speak at a meeting, you're gonna be able to go and talk to a newcomer too. You can't just be a big shot in NA. If you have a responsibility, we have a responsibility to be here and to talk to you. But that doesn't relieve us of our responsibility to go after the newcomer who's still suffering. That's our primary responsibility. It's not speaking. You guys could get along and do well for the rest of your existence and never hear us or never hear about the beginning of NA. You could do it because the responsibility is to the newcomer. And so anyway, but one of the things that happened in the very beginning was we did a lot of 12-step work. We took off and went to, well, I'm going to tell you, there was 2 meetings. There was one on Roads and Moore Park, and there was one in Burbank at Bill and Zona's place. Bill was a Jewish guy, and Zona was a black gal. Wonderful people, had a wonderful relationship. We had a wonderful meeting there, and how it ended up was after a year or 2 maybe, Bill started using again. He went back to CRC, and Zona started using again, and she got murdered. And that was pretty sad for us, because that was the second NA meeting in existence. And then the third NA meeting, I believe it was the third, and if it wasn't, you can correct me, but there was a guy by the name of Lou Eccles. And Louis was a neat guy, very sincere, and he started a meeting in Long Beach, which was probably 30 miles or something from where we were, which was a long ways to go. But it wasn't long for us because we didn't care if we had to drive 30 miles or 300, we just went. And so we went out to Louis' meeting, and that was sort of informal, sort of laid back, and he liked jazz, and so it was cool with low lights and stuff, and everything was cool, And So anyway, the meeting went on for about a year, and then Louis got sick, and Louis went in the hospital, and in 2 months he was dead. He had leukemia. And that was a sad thing for us, you know, because he had no reason to die. He hadn't done anything wrong. He'd been dedicated to NA. He was doing the right thing. He was one of our mainstays in the program. And that hurt us a lot, you know. But then there was Jimmy Kennan. Paul Stewart, Mary Jane's fourth husband, and he became my sponsor. And she had problems with him, and I had problems with him. You know? But he was the only guy around that supposedly was clean enough to sponsor somebody. And Jimmy was my mentor, but Paul was my sponsor. And Paul was very proud of himself because he was a heroin addict. He didn't have a drinking problem. He was able to drink. And I thought, boy, that is really weird, you know. But he was my sponsor, so what can I say, you know? I mean, God sent him to me. He sent a pure, honest, trustworthy man, you know. And I think Paul believed it himself, that he was that kind of a person, you know. And I trusted this guy. I loved him. Well, I'll tell you one thing that happened, and that's the thing about NA and about the beginning. Paul, when he became my sponsor, the first day, he called me every single night for a year, every single night. And he said, Gene, you going to a meeting tonight? And he didn't have a car, you know. He said, hey, Gene, you going to a meeting tonight? And I was tired. Maybe I just woke up. I was beat, man. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm going, you know. And a lot of times I didn't want to go. But because he called me, I went. He said, well, pick me up, you know. So I go and pick him up. And in fact, my sponsor, I became my sponsor's sponsor, I think, in that respect. I always had to take him to meetings, but he was always the one that initiated. So I went to a meeting every night for a year. And after that, one weekend after that, I wanted to go on, after a year, I wanted to go down to Palm Springs, take my family down there, you know. So I had to get his permission. I said, Paul, well, no, it wasn't. Yeah, I guess it was, no, it wasn't a year. Well, I don't know. Anyway, I asked him if I could have permission to go down there, and he said, well, he says, but first you have to check and see if there's any AA meetings down there, because I know there's no NA meetings, so you have to go and make sure that there's meetings and then set it up so you can go every night, you know. And so I said, okay. Well, anyway, I know it wasn't a year because Paul, being that he didn't have a drinking problem, but he drank occasionally, in 6 months, he had 11 months on the program. I had 6 months on the program. 11 months, and he started using again. And I said, man, I said, here he is, just about ready to have a year, and he starts using again, you know. And so anyway, that was the way it was, and he was back and forth and using and coming and going. And then he married Mary Jane, and then you know what he did to her. I mean, and this guy was very charismatic, you know, wonderful guy, nice personality, just a great guy. But he didn't have the integrity and the honesty that it took to become a real member of NA, you know. And I'm not sure if he had the mental capacity to even realize that, because he was a good guy, wasn't he? Yeah. I mean, he was one. Anyway.
And he loved NA.
And he loved NA. He really did. He was dedicated. But he just didn't understand the full impact of our program. And so anyway, but I'll tell you one of the greatest things that happened to me and a couple other guys that first year was our first Christmas. Now, I came in March 21st of 62. Christmas night, Jimmy Kennan called me. He said, Jim, he says, there's a guy downtown L.A., and I live in San Fernando, about 25 miles from downtown. He says, there's a guy down there that needs our help. He's in a hotel down there, and he called me and this and that, So he says, will you take a couple guys and go down and see him, man? This is Christmas Eve. Well, Christmas morning, about 12:30. And I said, oh, yeah, no problem, man. I was all excited. Then I did get excited, And because that first year, there was a lot of excitement. So I called Roger, who lived in Burbank, about halfway down. I called Bob McLaughlin, who lived in Long Beach. And I said, hey, I'll stop by and pick up Roger. And Bob, you meet us over there at this hotel. So that's what we did. I picked up Roger, went down there and met with this guy. And we stayed there all night with this guy. The next morning, we got him and took him first we tried to get him in a hospital, then we took him to his brother's house, and anyway, we spent the whole night. So about 9 o'clock Christmas morning, we go back to our families. They're happy we're back. We're happy we're back. We have a good Christmas. We enjoy ourselves, and we weren't even tired, That's the way it was. We didn't get tired of doing those kind of things, It was like there was a joy in our heart that stimulated our energy level. We used to go, Mel Hellman is here. You'll hear him tomorrow morning. Mel and I used to go out to CRC during the week, work nights, and that was a long way. How far was that? 100 miles. Yeah. 100 miles. We'd go out on a work night, and go out there and put out a meeting, get back 1 o'clock, get up the next morning, 7 o'clock, go to work at 8, and feel like $1 million. Why? How come we weren't tired, It was because we were expending our love and emotion and sincerity and trust with these guys, and we were replenished all the time. And so anyway, there was a great replenishment there. And but I'll tell you one thing. During that first year, I had a lot of problems with the Mexicans. And Sylvia was a ringleader. I could not believe it, man. I'll tell you what happened. And she had a nucleus of Mexican mafia, It was Sylvia and her 4 brothers. And me and Paul, we started meeting at Yucca and Gower down there. It was a nice meeting. It was an open meeting, And boy, it was wonderful, And we came and the Mexican mafia. Of course, we didn't know they were in the mafia at that time. And they were coming, participating, and everything. It was wonderful, And so then, one night, a guy calls me from the parole department and says, hey, sir, you guys are helping addicts and stuff, He said, I'd like to come around and see the meeting and see what's going on, I said, hey, come on over Tuesday night, man. Yeah, or Thursday night, I think it was. And I said, come on in, find out what we're doing, I said, well, this is a good opportunity for us to get an in with the parole department, So he comes and sits there, and here comes a couple gringos and about 5 Mexicans, and hey, man, who's that guy over there? What's he doing here? Because he didn't look like any of us. And I said, well, I said, this is an open meeting, he come and he wants to find out some stuff that, would be a benefit for us. And we don't like him here, We don't like these guys, man. This is NA, man. This is not a public display, And so we went back and forth, and finally I got a little tough. And I said, well, you know what? He's staying here tonight. That's it. And you can come or go or whatever you want. But I invited the guy, and he's staying. So I don't know if they left or stayed or what. But anyway, we had the meeting, and but then next Thursday night, here comes the Mexican mafia. And they brought about 4 or 5 other guys in the mafia. And the first thing they said is, hey, we want to have a vote. and so anyway, they voted, and guess who won? So they closed the meeting, and that was it. And so there was a little tension for a few weeks, you know. But I'll tell you, the love of NA has penetrated all that difficulty, all those hardships, all those struggles, all those kinds of things. We have a tight bond that nobody can break, you know. Her brothers, I love them, man. I love them. You know, a lot of us have hepatitis C. A lot of us are not going to be around as long as we should, you know. One of her brothers, Rick, has hepatitis C. He's waiting for a liver transplant.
George.
I'm George, yeah. And Hank just passed away unexpectedly last year. And it hurts us. Yeah. It hurts us deeply because it's our family. We're together. We're bonded together. You know, it's not like just somebody we know. No, we've got bonds that are strong. You know, because we've struggled. We've been through difficulties with each other and with our own families. And with other people. We've been through tremendous struggles and difficulties. But it's made us stronger. It's developed our character. It's developed our trust. This has been a blessing for me to be here with these two ladies. My mother abandoned me. I was raised in a foster home. The people provided clothes and food and warmth, but no love, you know. These two ladies are like my mama, you know. They are. And I love them. Because I love women. You know why I love women? Because my mother was a woman. And she didn't want to abandon me, but she didn't know any better. There wasn't any program for her when she hung herself in the county jail. And I guess that's one thing that the Lord Jesus Christ, my higher power now, has blessed me with an opportunity to be a chaplain at our county jail. Now to be a community chaplain in our city of our county of Jackson County. To be able to go into the penitentiaries. That's been a blessing for me. The 1st of October, we had a 5-bedroom house in Ashland, Oregon. My wife, my daughter and I drove down to see some relatives in L.A. We were passing by Marysville, and my daughter says, "Dad, let's go over and see your mother's grave." She's never been there, you know. And she knew she hung herself, and so we went over there. We went through the place in jail where she was. We went through seen the bar where she drank. We went out and seen the grave and the grave marker that I put on there that nobody else. She was buried by the county. And so we had sort of an emotional connection with my mother and my daughter. And when we got back, I said, "You know what?" I said, "The people, I was renting this 5-bedroom house to some people, and they just moved out." I said, "Sylvia, what I want to do, I want to turn that into a home for women with children, you know." And so I talked to some other agencies in town there. They got the mayor of Ashland to help sponsor this program. And so that gives me a connection with my mother. I love women. I've done a lot of wrong things with women years ago. But I tell you, I have more respect for women now than I've ever had in my entire life. I have respect for Mary Jane and Sylvia, especially for my own wife. We've been married 48 years. It's been a tremendous struggle. But you know what? The struggle has strengthened us. Like the struggle in NA has strengthened all of us. You know. So when you have struggles and you're hurting and you're fighting, and it seems like there's no end to your struggles, continue to struggle. Continue to pray and meditate. Continue to connect with the God of your understanding, and He'll bring you through. He'll never let you suffer more than you're capable of handling. And when you're over that, you will be so strong, and you will be dedicated, and you will be the mainstay of NA when we're gone. And as long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that would tear us apart, all will be well. And that's what I've talked about, the ties that bind us together. Don't let the struggles and the hardships and the resentments and things tear you down, you know. And I want to close with this statement. Now, there's a few of us here that are going to be speaking that were in the early 60s or early 70s or whatever. A small group of people that have done something. And if we weren't there, you would have been here. Just a mix-up in the dates, that's all. But never believe that a few dedicated people can't change the world, because that's all who ever have. And I thank NA for that. Thank you. I love you.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please help us improve our ranking so others can find us by putting a review on Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast index. NAPOD is ad-free thanks to the folks supporting the show with $1 or more per month. If you enjoy listening, you can join them by going to napod.xyz and looking for the donate link. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.